On behalf of Fully Booked, let's all give a round of applause for Walking Dead artist, Mr. Charlie Adlard. Charlie, maybe you can first tell us how you got into the comic book business.
Hello, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to the Philippines. Thank you. How did I get into the comic industry? By pure slog, I think is the answer. I've always loved comic books ever since I was about 6, when my dad brought home The Mighty World of Marvel #1 to my home, and which was a British reprint of the Fantastic Four, the Incredible Hulk, and Spider-Man, and it was done as an anthology, which is the only way comics are successful in the UK. And from that moment on, I was hooked into comics. So from a very early age, I wanted to get into comics, but obviously at 12, 13, whatever, I didn't really know how. I went away to art college not to study comics, but to study film and video at the time. And when I came out of art college, to cut a very long story short, I was thinking, well, how the hell do I get into this business? So I basically moved home and started working on a portfolio. And all I did was find out where various conventions were and take my portfolio along to these conventions and start finding out where editors were, showing them my work. I was very lucky at the time because it was the time where comics were, for the sake of argument, really getting really huge. Watchmen and Dark Knight had come out. Everyone was going on about how comics were for grown-ups. X-Men #1 had sold however many million copies it had sold. Consequently, that meant loads of American editors were coming over to our humble country and trying to see where the next load of talent were. So I didn't, thankfully, have to go any further than Scotland to try and get some work. And I think it took me about 2 years to finally get my first commission, which was for the Judge Dredd magazine, and that was around about, I think, 1991, something like that.
Okay. And how did you end up becoming the artist of Walking Dead?
It's a very dull story, funnily enough. Robert just emailed me one day and said, would you like to draw this little known comic that I'm working on? And I said, well, all right, send me the script, send me the issues that have already been done. And he did. I read the script, I read the first 6 issues, and I thought, well, this is all right, this is okay. And the main factor I started working on The Walking Dead at the time was I was in between jobs. And, when you're a jobbing cartoonist, as I was then, you kind of, unless the project's really, really, really bad, you will say yes to anything.
So how has your life changed ever since The Walking Dead became such a huge TV hit?
Well, I wouldn't be here for starters, would I? Professionally, it's changed beyond belief. I've gone from, like I say, a kind of a journeyman comic book artist, and I was in the industry for well over 10 years before I even started drawing The Walking Dead. So I've been in the industry for in excess of 20 years now. Obviously, doing a book like this and the phenomena that it's become has, like I say, professionally for me, just blown it out of the water. I've gone from a guy that I'd be 10th down the list for most editors to call if they wanted something to obviously, I'd like to think anyway, being at the top of the list. Obviously financially it's been pretty good. And I get the opportunity to do stuff like this, which I would never in a million years dreamed that I'd be doing. personally, it's not changed at all. I still live in the same house I lived in 10 years ago. I'm not kind of living in any kind of vast castle with a moat or anything like that now in the UK just because of The Walking Dead. I've had kids since The Walking Dead, so that's changed, I suppose, personally. But literally, I work in the same studio I worked in. I'm working in where I do, which is in a very rural part of the UK. I kind of feel very desensitized to the whole Walking Dead phenomena because, for me, life just goes on as normal. I haven't got Hollywood just down the road or anything like that. You know, everything Walking Dead-wise is literally 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. So I've got this kind of nice distance between everything. So it's only when I come and do stuff like this or go to the States or whatever do I kind of see the physicality of its success.
Let's talk a little bit about the characters of Walking Dead. Who's your favorite character?
That's probably a toss-up between Michonne and Andrea in the comic.
And who do you enjoy drawing the most and the least?
I probably enjoy drawing the most. Again, Michonne, but probably Ezekiel at the moment because he's just fun. It's just great basically drawing George Clinton every time he appears, which is he's great fun to draw. The least is probably, this might be a surprise, is probably Carl. That's why we dismember him so much. No, I just find children are very hard to draw. It's as simple as that. So it's always a struggle to get Carl just the right age. I think that's the problem with just drawing children anyway, but Carl especially. And there's always been problems inherent. For instance, you know, Robert obviously always wants him to wear the hat, and I've always argued, but really if you drew him with the hat, his head would be too small. Therefore, the hat would just fall, you know, about down to his nose. So it kind of would look silly. And then Robert says, well, we could pretend he's got tissue paper. You know, yes, but we would have to say that. So we have these kind of weird discussions about things like that, and of course after the unfortunate incident after the No Way Out storyline, you know, it's even harder to draw him now because I don't really want to draw that horrible scar he's got all the time now. So. Yes, he's just... I love the character, but to draw, he's a nightmare.
If the governor was still alive, who would win in a fight between Negan and the governor?
Who would win in a fight? The Hulk or the Thing? Negan or the governor? I think Negan would easily win. Not only because he would obviously just beat him to a pulp, because he's obviously a more powerful man, but I do think he's a more... wise, I wouldn't think I'd say that about Negan, a wiser villain, more intelligent villain. I think the governor was always just a bit of a nutcase, whereas Negan, there's a reason for what he does, and he's not actually insane. He's actually worryingly quite coherent.
Is there anything about the season 5 TV show that you're allowed to discuss?
No. It'd be good.
Let's talk about your other projects. Are you working on any new comic book outside of The Walking Dead?
Part of the reason I've elected now just to pencil The Walking Dead as opposed to pencil and ink it like I used to, as I'm being pestered by a fly here. Another fan. And was primarily after we did the bi-weekly stuff for All Out War, was to give me a bit more time to do some other stuff. Because Robert and I, for the last 3 or 4 years, have been attempting to do another project together called The Passenger, which I've now finished about 43 pages of. Robert announced at San Diego foolishly about 3 years ago, saying it would be out next year. So obviously that didn't happen. Robert needs to finish writing it as well, which would be useful. It's a standalone, one-off French-style graphic album. So it's large format with a sort of quite a few panels per page. It's very, if anyone's familiar with the European comics industry, it's that kind of format which I'm personally a big fan of, and I've managed to persuade Robert to write something in that style. So hopefully that should be out next year. That's famous last words. But also I've got some other French books, because like I say, I'm a big fan of the French industry. I'm working with my French publisher, who also published The Walking Dead in France, called Delcourt. I'm working with them and their other company, Soleil, on a new book called Vampire State Building. And hopefully, as soon as I finish The Passenger, I'll be able to jump onto that one, which will probably take a few years to draw, because it's 2 books worth of story as opposed to 1 book, which Passenger is. But I'm really looking forward to getting onto that. Apart from that, that's pretty much my schedule filled up into the foreseeable.
Tell us a little bit about who your artistic influences are.
Here we go, the long list. When I was about 13 or 14, and I was still collecting all these Marvel UK reprints, I didn't start collecting American comic books properly, like the actual proper comic books, probably until I was about 17 or 18. But before then, there was a comic that Marvel UK did called Star Wars Weekly, which was obviously the reprints of the Star Wars comics from the States. In the backup strip was the Micronauts, and that was the first time I saw an artist, i.e. Michael Golden, where I thought, ooh, this guy's really good, I must follow what this artist does, as opposed to following the characters. Oh, I love the Fantastic Four, therefore I'll buy everything, it's got the Fantastic Four in. This was this was, I want to seek out Michael Golden's work. So at the time, obviously, reading the UK reprints, it was hard, because there wasn't much more Michael Golden in to get from Marvel UK. But obviously, as soon as I got into the actual original American comic books, I could seek more of it. But so he was my first love, so to speak, really, which then obviously led on. The older I got, the more artists I got aware of. Big influences on my style are, if we're talking about the classics, it's obviously people like Kirby, Will Eisner. I think probably the biggest genius is Alex Toth. I love Alex Toth. I think he's I'll read anything that man has done. It's amazing. Recent guys, it all ties in. I'm very interested in kind of illustrative American magazine illustration art, film poster art, things like that. So my leanings towards comic book artists tend to be more illustrative. So we're talking people like Tommy Lee Edwards, Sean Murphy, 2 good friends of mine actually, Sean Phillips, Duncan Fegredo, guys like that lend a more, I don't know, for want of a better word, illustration rather than sort of straight full-on superheroics. Obviously, there's the actual classic American illustrative artists that I adore, people like Bob Peak, Bernie Fuchs, these guys, they could design and paint at the same time. It was amazing. And I've also got a massive love and been very strongly influenced by European comics as well, who they are too far and numerous to mention individually, but the French industry is a big influence on what I do.
Can you let us know your normal daily process when it comes to drawing an issue of Walking Dead?
Yeah, get up in the morning. Kids go off to school. I go into the studio, I start on a page, top left-hand corner, work down to bottom right-hand corner, the end. It is as simple as that. I don't have a kind of a very detailed work process. I literally do. If I'm penciling and inking, I literally will start top. I'm not one of these guys that does easy panels first or hard panels first. I like to get a sense of the story, so I literally do start at the top and work down to the bottom. Repeat process with the inking. Simple as that.
What is it like working with Robert Kirkman?
Oh, it's horrible. No, it's great. I mean, we've developed a kind of as you would after working with somebody for over 10 years, we've developed a sort of a shorthand, and within that shorthand, Robert's scripts have become a lot looser because he knows what I can do, and vice versa, and we respect each other's skill sets. So Robert rarely comments on the artwork, and I rarely comment on the writing. We leave each other to do what we do best. Robert only really sees the artwork when it's finished. I very rarely send him thumbnails or anything like that, partly because time is always an issue. But he knows what I can do. He knows I'm a professional. I know he's a professional. So it's a nice, easy working relationship.
Aside from comics, you also have a great love for music, and that you actually have a hobby on the side. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'll just play the drums, that's all. I've just always been interested in music. Yeah, more so than just a casual listener of music, and I still like to seek out new music. I find a lot of people, especially my age, tender age of 47, that sort of they get to a certain period and then they sort of just almost close themselves off to anything new, which I can't really understand. I like to see what's coming out now, what's current. In fact, I'm kind of more interested in the now more than the past in a lot of ways. I don't know if that's how I live my life too. I don't know if there's something there, but yeah, and I've been playing music, if you can call drumming music. A lot of people don't. Since I've been about 16, I've been in bands. Still am in bands. I'm always interested in doing my own or our own stuff rather than covers, things like that. Again, I find that you get to a certain age, the only bands you can be in are sort of cheesy pub rock bands, and I never wanted to do that. I wanted to, always be in a band where you're creating, much like what I do at home at the drawing board. So yes, and hopefully we're working on an album. Ooh. First time I've ever done an album, ever. And it just so happens that our guitarist is also a comic book artist. So at least one good thing, it's going to have a really good album cover.
Maybe you can tell everyone the name of your band so they can look out.
Yes, we do have a Facebook page, and I think we've got about at least 10 followers. Hope you all go follow it. That'd be brilliant. We're called Cosmic Rays.
Out of all of the storylines that you've done so far for Walking Dead, which is your favorite storyline?
Probably. I really enjoyed doing Fear the Hunters, actually, more so just because of the ending. I thought the ending was one of the strongest endings we've ever done. Because I've always been a big fan of, ironically, I've always been a big fan of things happening off screen. I think your imagination conjures up much more when you don't see something. When you do see something, it's always disappointing when the monster is revealed at the end of some TV show, film, whatever, because it's never as bad as what you imagine it to be. So the reason Fear the Hunters, the ending, works so well is because we never show what Rick and crew do to the hunters, and I think that had a much more impact than if we'd have shown, buckets and buckets of blood like we kind of normally do.
Can you give us an idea what's going to happen now that All Out War is done?
Not really. Well, you won't have to wait for long, because I think the next issue's out in... Well, I got comps for it, so it should be out very, very soon over here. All I can say is when Robert told me what was going to happen, I remember thinking, brilliant, that is exactly what I want to hear. Because for me personally, it's re-energized the whole Walking Dead for me, what Robert's got planned. And I got quite excited about how we could do this, do that, do the other, things like that. I'm sorry I'm not giving anything away, but it was exciting. And it was very exciting to get the script and to read in more detail what he had planned and to visualize it for him. So I think hopefully everyone will be really happy, because I think we do something very unexpected.
So does that mean that All Out War is done? It comes back to a monthly comic instead of once every 2 weeks?
Sorry, yes, just once a month now. I know, it's just pathetic. We can't do bi-weekly forever, isn't it?
Okay.
But the first, issue 127 is a double issue, folks. So Robert surprised me with that one. I was like, oh, God, I'm done with the bi-weekly. Oh, now it's a double issue. Oh, good. But then it's monthly and 22 pages. I think everyone will find it hard to get used to that after so much Walking Dead, sort of suddenly going back to just 22 pages a month.
So far you guys have done 127 issues. Is there...
No, I've done 121 issues.
Is there a specific number that you guys are aiming before concluding the series?
259. No. No, not really. No. I think it'll end when we feel it's time to end it, if you see what I mean. Now, whether that's sales dictating it's time to end it, who knows? Or whether we decide we've told the story, it's time to end it. It will be one or the other. We have talked about an end game. Now, whether that happens in the next 100 issues or... Well, I was going to say 300 issues, but I think that might be impossible, because I'll probably be about 80 or something by the time. I always have to emphasize to Robert that he is 12 years younger than I am. So my time is a bit more limited than his time. And I think when you're in your mid-30s, your whole life is sort of stretching out in front of you. You don't sort of think in those sort of mortality sort of terms. Right, you get to my age, you start thinking, I haven't got that much longer. So perhaps, we might finish it sooner than Robert might want to, just by the fact that I might get too old to draw the bloody thing.
Now that obviously with the success of the TV show, the readership has really gone up so much, do you feel much more pressure in drawing the art now that there's a lot of other people reading the comic book, or does it feel the same?
No, I don't actually, because I think more for the reason that I was talking about before, about being so far away from it that I'm not really aware of the success or anything of the TV show, of the comic, etc., etc. I think if I was living in New York or LA or somewhere like that, where it just felt like there was more of it going on, I might be more aware. I might be felt, and I might be given to feel that there was more pressure. But because I'm literally sitting in my studio looking out onto a nice field opposite me, in a nice quiet part in a town called Shrewsbury in a county called Shropshire in the UK, it almost feels like I'm still doing issue 1. It really is no different.
Do you ever get artist's block?
No, I don't. But a lot of people always say, how do you start with a blank page? I say, well, I don't start with a blank page. I have a script. That's the inspiration. You've got the inspiration there, so it never actually is the blank page. I think the hardest thing is the writer's job, because they literally start with a blank page. All they've got is what's going on in their head. So I do actually think that in those terms, it's a harder thing, whereas at least as an artist, we do have something to get inspiration from.
Is there anyone from the audience that wants to start asking questions? Anyone?
I'm very interested in what you mentioned about the writing process of how you did Walking Dead. Actually, I'm a writer myself, but one of the problems I'm having when I'm working with a comic book artist is how much detail as regards to a description of the page should I give him so that I won't be impeding the artist's creativity. Would you describe this kind of discussion process that you have with Robert?
Yeah, I mean, again, as a writer, I mean, I know certain writers who will literally write paragraphs and paragraphs of description. Alan Moore is very famous for doing that. Whereas some writers will write as minimum as possible, and leave it all up to the artist. It's really more down to you as a writer whether you think you can trust your artist to visualize what you have in your own head. I know people who write loads of description. I know that they don't actually intend the artist to put all that in there. It's almost like they're just getting it out of their system and putting it all on paper, so at least they know it's down there. So it's more almost like an exorcism of their ideas, just boom, straight onto the page. And whether the artist chooses to take bits is up to them. Like I say, with Robert and I, it is a fairly minimal process. He gives me the bare bones of what's needed, and then I will take that and run with it. I mean, obviously, there are certain times, like for instance, when he first described Alexandria. It was a fairly detailed description of what he envisaged, but after that, the rest is up to me to do with how I want to do it.
If there's a zombie apocalypse, what's your strategy? What would be your choice of weapon, and how long do you think you'll survive?
I think I'd last for about 5 minutes. I'm an artist. What do I know about survival? The thing I'd have my only weapon would be a very sharp pen, which wouldn't really get through to the brain, would it really? I could kill it by ink poisoning eventually, I think. I'd be hopeless. I'd be utterly hopeless. I'm a suburban kind of guy. I'm no good at survival. Plus the fact that The Walking Dead isn't real. I don't know if you've kind of thought that. And it actually will never happen. So I think we're all right, really.
You were telling me, Charlie, that you actually appeared in one of the episodes of Walking Dead. Maybe you can tell the crowd a little about that.
Yes, I was a zombie in the pilot. I went down for 3 days on set in Atlanta, where they were filming. Well, they still do film it near Atlanta. And to be honest, I thought, well, if I'm there for 3 days, that's kind of boring, hanging around set for 3 days. Not that I was not appreciative of being invited down and everything, but I have been on film sets before. I know it is, unless you're actually actively involved in the production, hanging around watching it being filmed is exciting for about 10 minutes, and the rest is like, okay, So, and you just find just spending your time apologising because you're always standing in the wrong place. So some crew member will come and realise you're standing on some cables. So you go, oops, sorry, and you move over there, and then you're still stood in the wrong place. So you have to move from there, and it just goes on. So I thought I'd at least be useful and act in The Walking Dead. So I was given the choice, actually. I could either be a zombie for 1 day or 2 days. And I thought, oh, I'm only here for 3 days, so 2 days might be a bit too much. So I opted for the 1 day option. And I'm in the scenes where Rick is on his horse coming down the street in Atlanta, and he turns the corner and there's the horde of zombies. I am in that horde, folks. You won't see me, but I am in that horde. So, but I was lucky because I was laughably referred to as VIP zombie, and which meant that I got the full-on makeup, which was brilliant. Because really, it wasn't worth having all that makeup done for the non-screen time that I had. So it was more, and actually that's what I really wanted to do. It's more exciting sitting in the makeup chair, having Greg Nicotiro's guys apply all the prosthetics and everything to my face, and I was sat there for a good hour having it all applied. It was brilliant. That was amazing, and to have that done. Plus, it was nice to sit in an air-conditioned room for an hour out of the incredible heat of Atlanta, which was just oppressive. It was horrible. You see those guys acting in that TV show, and they look dirty, they look sweaty. That's not makeup.
Do you actually have any influence with the way the TV show goes?
No, none whatsoever. I mean, Robert obviously is an executive producer and et cetera, but also I opted right at the beginning to not to ask to be involved, because I realized that, well, for two reasons. I didn't really want to have all my time taken up being involved with the TV show. I knew that the comic wouldn't get done. If I spent 4 or 5 months either doing conceptual art or storyboarding or whatever design work would be needed, it would take me off doing the comic. So therefore, the comic wouldn't come out as much. And really, for Robin and I, the most important thing out of this whole universe that we've created is still the comic book. If everything else goes, so long as we've got the comic book, that's all that really matters. So, you know, Robert can do, as a writer, he can do this stuff on the hoof. He can write on planes. He can write, you know, in transit somewhere. He can work wherever. Well, I can't sort of sit on a plane and work. I need a drawing board, and you know, and so really I have to stay at home and work from home. And the other reason was I didn't really want to go over the same ground twice. I've drawn it all, so I didn't really want to go back and redraw more zombies and redraw more sets that I'd already conceived, you know, 7 or 8 years ago. So I thought in the end it would be easier just to step back and just let them get on with it. And you know, this is genuinely true. I really do think they've done a good job without me.
I want to go back first to issue 127. Are you planning to ditch Rick and his group?
Do you think I can tell you these things? No matter however you phrase the question, it's still going to be the same answer, I'm afraid, which is wait and see.
As an artist, what's the basis of payment? Do you get paid like per issue, or do you have profit sharing in the overall scheme, or how does that work?
I thought you were going to ask me how much I earn then. At Image, we do things slightly differently, because normally, if you're an artist, a work-for-hire artist, you do get paid per page. You get a page rate, whether it's pencils and inking, and you just get paid, you know, accordingly. Because obviously, if you're working for Marvel or DC or whatever, you know, it's their characters you're working on, so it's their way of basically paying you off, and you not claiming any rights to anything that they own. Whereas with Image, the majority of stuff for Image is creator-owned, so we basically have, I suppose for argument's sake, more of the classic book deal, which is basically you get you just get royalties from the book. So, but of course, the Image deal is a pretty fantastic deal if the book does really well, because Image just take a basic cut for printing and publicity and everything like that, but it doesn't rise exponentially with the profits of the book. So they just take their cut, that's it. The rest of whatever the book makes is for me and Robert to divide up equally. So, times are good.
I'm sure you've read the letter of actor Stephen Yeun to Robert Kirkman, his reaction to Glenn's death. Were you able to read it? What did you think of that? I found their exchange hilarious.
I'm trying to think, was that just after the event? Did it appear in the letters column? Yeah, I did read it, yeah. It was always quite funny because I remember I did a San Diego just after we'd killed Glenn, and Stephen was there, and everyone was going, "Oh, your times are limited, then, aren't you?" But look, they killed Andrea in season 2. We've still got Andrea. Who have they killed, and who have we killed, and they've still got? I'm trying to think now. Sorry? Yeah. Well, no, he's not even alive in our book. He's never existed. Oh, Carol. Carol's still alive in the series, and we killed her ages ago. So just because we've killed Glenn in the comic book doesn't mean Glenn will die in the series. This is no big plot spoiler. I'm hypothesizing here. I don't know. But, the TV series does do things differently to the book. So if Negan appears, will he kill Glenn? Who knows? He might kill somebody else. He might not kill anybody. Who knows? This is the thing. So Stephen might be in the show right until the end of the show. We don't know. So I don't think Stephen's got anything to worry about. Or has he?
Was it actually intentional that the TV series and the comic book storyline have not really much to do with each other?
Yeah, it was right from the beginning. Well, I think it does have a lot to do with each other because we do always, whatever the TV show does, it always does come back to a plot line in the comic book, whether it's... Yeah, one thing I was really surprised that the TV show did, which hope this isn't a spoiler to anyone that's not seen season 4, was do their version of the twins killing each other. I thought, okay, they dropped the ball with the baby. They didn't have the guts to kill a baby, but they killed a couple of preschoolers. But I thought that was quite brave of them to do something like that. Okay, yes, different characters, different scenario, etc., etc. But it was still very much down to the plot line in the book. And I've always envisaged it. So I'll just put the microphone down a minute. But I've always envisaged that the Walking Dead plot line does that, and the TV show does this. So it always comes back. It wavers off and then comes back periodically to what's going in the comic. I mean, even at the end of season 4, I think pretty much most people who've read the comic know what storyline they are referring to in Terminus. So again, we come back to the comic. So, but it makes it interesting. I don't think anyone would be really interested in watching exactly the same thing again, but just on a different medium. Well, what's the point? And we've all got to remember, TV and comics, even though they're intrinsically linked, are also very different at the same time. And what works in comics might not necessarily work on TV, and vice versa. We've got to treat it like a different thing.
Have you ever drawn anything so gruesome, so grotesque that you had to sit back and look at it and say, that is so terrible, or that is so brilliant?
Well, you see, you have to blame Robert. He's the man that comes up with all the descriptions. So he's the one to blame for all the horribleness that I just draw it. But no, when we did the Governor Michonne torture scene, that was the only time I actually had to phone Robert up at the time and said, "You've really got to convince me to draw this because this is pretty horrible stuff, you sick MF." So, and he did. He convinced me, by probably waved a big fat check under my nose, I think was the... No, he convinced me it was perfect for the characters, and it was, the only way to do it was to show how to do it because blah, 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 blah. I won't go into the details now, but that's the only time I've actually ever considered not doing something. The other particular and horrible bits of The Walking Dead I've thought were all necessary. But it doesn't particularly disturb me because in the end it's just marks on paper. I'm not actually caving somebody's head in for reference next to me. Just I'm just doing it out of my imagination, and because of that, and I suppose because it's black and white as well, it's there's another element of desensitization, if that's a word. So it's not. I'm not sitting there drawing something and then I've got a bucket next to me where I'm throwing up at the same time. So it's not as hard as you think.
And do you still use any kind of reference when you're drawing zombies?
No, I've never used reference for drawing zombies. I just let my hand with zombies especially. I just kind of. Zombies are the easiest thing in the book to draw because it's almost like closing your eyes and let your hand just move and see what happens when you've finished. It's almost that sort of process. You just start drawing and see what I come up with because there's so many of them. If I had to think individually about what every single zombie looked like, I would be working on the book forever. So you've just got to go with it and just do these sort of flights of fancy with your hand.
I just want to ask, was the idea of killing Shiva came from you? Because I remember reading an article. It was an interview of Kirkman, and he was asked there, why aren't there any zombie animals in CWD? And he answered, because of the artist, that would be you. You love to draw people, zombies, and you're not really into drawing animals.
Did I? Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yes.
No. Killing Shiva was totally Robert's idea. I think he realised that actually having a tiger in the book was more problematical than it was worth because too many people are asking too many awkward questions on how is it alive? How do you keep feeding it? Why isn't it killing other human beings? And all that sort of stuff. I did have a hard time drawing Shiva. Tigers are bloody hard to draw, really hard to draw. So much so that I was kind of relieved when Shiva does get killed because I don't have to draw tigers anymore. I'm not anti-drawing animals at all. Animals are generally quite hard to draw as an artist, I think. Having said that, I'm drawing a lot of horses at the moment. And I'm kind of enjoying drawing horses. I've sort of broken the barrier. Horses are probably notoriously one of the hardest animals to draw, and especially working out how they're running and how all the legs move, and they are really hard. But I've kind of feels like I've gone through a wall with the horses. I've come out the other end, and I've almost seen the light of how they work. And as soon as I've sort of seen that, I'm there. I'm doing horses. I'd love to have an all-horse issue of The Walking Dead. That would be brilliant. I'd love it.
Which do you think lends to better horror? Classic slow zombies or fast zombies?
Classic zombies, because that's what they are. Those are proper zombies, not these fast-moving ones. That's just cheating. I mean, every monster has to have a weakness. If you've got running zombies, where's the weakness? The whole good thing about zombies is you can escape them by a casual stroll.
So if you're not going to be a comic book artist, do you see yourself as doing another job?
No, that's all I can do. No, it's true. If people have always asked me that, what would you do instead? I think, well, I don't know, because literally I've always wanted to do this, so I've never ever trained to do anything else. I can drum, But, you know, that seemed probably more risky than being a comic book artist. But no, that's all I can say. I fully believe, actually, that everybody has a talent in whatever, whether it's sports, arts, mathematics, whatever. And you're very lucky if you can apply your talent and turn it into a career. I've been very lucky that my one and only skill I've been able to apply and turn it into a career, thank God.
Good afternoon.
Hi there.
Did you get any hate emails after you took over Tony Moore's
Hate mails?
Yeah.
I'm going to say I got hate mails. That sounds a bit extreme. I certainly got a lot of people saying, you know, we don't like change. We don't like the change. But I think that's a general thing with most people. Most people don't like change. We all want, if you like something, you want it to carry on forever. So when Tony left and I took over, bearing in mind Tony was the only guy that was associated with The Walking Dead at the time, a lot of people saw it as just this terrible thing because, you know, the creator of The Walking Dead is leaving. And, you know, who is this interloper coming in with his blacks and his more realistic faces and, you know... I mean, and it didn't help because Tony and, as I've just sort of insinuated there, Tony and I draw very differently. You know, Tony's a lot more cartoony. He uses a lot more lines, arguably a lot more detail in a certain way, whereas I rely more on sort of expressionist stuff and lots of blacks and sort of the more sort of lean towards more realism. So it was very brave of Robert to ask somebody like me rather than get someone that draws like Tony to make that would arguably make the transition less hard. So, you know, kudos to Robert for just saying, yeah, and Robert said to me, he said, you know, just go for it. Don't try and draw like Tony, which I wasn't going to anyway, because I firmly believe if I'm asked to do a project, they've got me for who I am, not that I can draw like somebody else. I mean, what's the point of asking me to do, what's the point of asking me anyway then? So, and, you know, I wasn't going to compromise and try and draw a bit like Tony. I just went in and did my own thing on it and hoped to God that people would like it. So yeah, at first there were a few people that were really anti what I was doing, and probably a few people said that they were going to leave the comic. You know, I don't know whether those people have come back or they left it after issue 6 and have never come back. But, you know, hey, you know, that's what happens. But I think we've got a few more readers since then anyway, so I think we're okay.
Thank you. Are you guys dead set on breaking the record of Brian Bendis and Mark Bagley? Most consecutive issues drawn?
Haven't we broken that record yet?
Have you got...
I think I don't know how many issues they did, but somebody told me
160. 160.
160. Oh, right, we haven't then. Yeah, we'll break that record. Oh yeah, totally. No, I want to do that one. I want to at least get that far.
Would you go for a happy ending, or would you see Rick and company eventually becoming zombies as well?
No, that's what I would like to say. Rob and I have discussed the end, and again, it's something that can be applied 20 issues from now. It can be applied 200 issues from now. You just build up to it from a certain time when we know it's time to end it. What happens, obviously, I can't tell you. So, but no, Carl and Rick just skip off together in the sunset, and they've discovered a cure, and all the zombies are human again, and the world is all right. That's what actually happens. No, it doesn't.
Do you and Robert Kirkman think that Rick should, die? Do you think that he should, be off the pages already?
Yes, we should kill him now. Well, the beauty of The Walking Dead is, what's so strong about it is the fact that Rick could die and it wouldn't matter to the book. I think we could actually kill Rick tomorrow. And I don't think it would put off readers. I think a lot of people are expecting Rick to die very soon. Who knows? He might do, but I don't think it's going to put many people off. Would anybody here stop reading the book if Rick died? Ooh, one, will you? You're obviously in a minority, sir. So I think the book's strong enough to survive without its arguably main character. I don't know if anyone's familiar. There was a TV show in the UK back in the late 70s called Blake 7. Anyone heard of that? Hey, one person. Anyway, it was a science fiction show about a bunch of rebels in a utilitarian sort of oppressive state set in the far future in space. Now, it sounds all very big budget, bearing in mind this is the BBC and it was filmed on the budget of about £20 per episode. So, all the spaceships are made out of cardboard on wires, etc., etc. Anyway, now, bearing in mind Blake 7 implies that there's a guy in it called Blake. And there was for about the first 2 seasons. He was the leader of the rebellion, this guy called Rog Blake. Anyway, they kill Blake after the 2nd season or something. Anyway, they still make a couple of more seasons, still called Blake 7, but it hasn't got Blake in it. So if we can copy Blake 7... and still call it... And bearing in mind, The Walking Dead's not even called Rick's World or something like that. So we could, taking Blake 7 as an example, we could easily kill him or anybody.
Sir, who's your most influential comic writer?
Comic writer?
Yes.
Ooh, that's an interesting one to ask a comic artist, because like I already have done, I've reeled off loads of artist influences. I know it's a cliche, but it's probably someone like Stan Lee, because I've never really considered that question. I'm trying to think if there is anyone that would. Yeah, because just by the pure nature that the guy came on and turned everything on its head back in the early 60s, and from that, everything else has sprung. It's as simple as that. And if it wasn't for Stan and obviously Jack and everybody, all these other artists, I don't think I'd be here today talking to you, and I don't think we'd be reading comics as they are today without him.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you give us an idea about your working schedule? What time of the day do you start drawing and what time do you finish?
It's a bit like how I work. It's a very simple schedule. Like I say, I get the kids go to school, I go to work. So I'm at work normally. I'm actually quite a morning person. I've always have been, even when I was a student. When most people, when they're students, will sleep in until 12 o'clock, whatever, in the afternoon. I was always up quite early. I was weird, but so I'll start work about sort of 8:30 in the morning. Have a break for lunch, finish around about 6 o'clock when the kids are home from school. It's as simple as that. I hate working at night. I don't like working at night. I'll do a bit of work if I have to. I'll get up really early in weekends and do a bit of work before, say, the rest of the family are up. So I quite often get up at 6 o'clock in the morning in the weekend. I actually get up earlier in weekends than I do in the week, just to get a bit more work done. But that gives me the rest. I work for a couple of hours. That gives me the rest of the weekends free to spend with the family, do whatever I have to do, around the house, whatever. I do like to keep my work and family life very separately. Work is for work. That's done at that time. Everything else is for another time, and that's always worked for me.
Good afternoon.
Where are you? Oh, over there. Hello.
How do you feel when you kill a character of the comic? Do you cry in the shower while taking a shower?
Always in the shower, yes. Just to wash away my tears. No, I don't think I've ever cried over a character's death. Robert might have done. Yeah, that's a question for him, isn't it, really? No, I sort of... By the time... If for instance, if, say, the death of... Well, sorry if it's a spoiler, anybody, if you haven't read that far, but say the death of Glenn... I kind of got most of it out of my system even before I drew it, because Robert told me about it, so I could think about it already. Then he sends me the script, so I read what happens and go, just think, how can you write this stuff? This is horrible. But by the time, I've thought about it, by the time Robert's told me, I've thought about it. By the time I've read the script, I've thought about it. By the time I've actually physically come to draw it, as I said before, it is literally just, I've kind of already got my emotions out of the way, so it is just marks on paper. I could be drawing white, cute seal puppies being clubbed to death and sort of be whistling a happy tune as I'm drawing it. Because, as I keep repeating, it's just marks on paper by that time. Not that I want cute, fluffy seals to be clubbed to death. I'm vehemently against that, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Now that the season 5 has started filming, whose character in the comics are you most anxious to see on television?
Well, you see, if I say who I'm most anxious to see on television, that will be a giveaway to who's going to be in season 5. So that's a very tricky question there. And I'm still not going to tell you. I'm looking forward to all the characters that I have ever drawn appear at some point in the TV show. Oh, sorry.
Your thoughts about the cast portraying the characters that you and Robert created?
I'm more than happy with how everyone has been portrayed, to be honest. I'm a realist. I know it would be foolish, for instance, when I first heard about the casting of Andrew Lincoln as Rick. Now, I don't know if anyone here knows, but Andrew Lincoln was already very famous in the UK. He'd been in quite a few major series. But he's always played a fairly innocuous, sort of bumbling kind of... He hasn't particularly played heroes before. So, in my head, I was thinking, Andrew Lincoln? As you know, he's almost played the more kind of Hugh Grant sort of characters in British television before Rick. So... to see him transform into Rick, and it was a weird... And when I met him on set when I was there on the pilot, and I still couldn't really get over the fact that this was Andrew Lincoln. And Robert had told me various other actors who had auditioned for the role, who visually I could see better American actors, quite famous as well. But they gave it to Andrew Lincoln. Now, after a couple of seasons, I can't think of anybody better to play Rick. He's just completely transformed in front of me. But like I said, I'm not naive enough to think that an actor has to look like the character to play that character, because that would be stupid to get someone that, say, looks like... someone looks like Carl exactly to play Carl, for instance. I mean, we've been lucky because we've had people, I've forgotten the name of the actor now, but the guy that played Dale, he looked just like Dale brilliantly. I mean, obviously, Danae Guerra looks stunningly like Michonne. I mean, when I met her the second time I was on set, that's the only time sort of my hairs on my arms stood up and everything, because I was just thinking, you're exactly how I drew you. It's amazing. The only time I thought, I'm not so sure about that, was probably the casting of Andrea. Only because I thought she should have been a lot younger. And that's not an issue with how somebody looks. That's an age thing. That's like casting Carl but giving it to a teenager in his, who's 16 or something like that. You just think, no, that doesn't work. He should be 10 or 11 initially. So I thought the character of Andrew was always problematical. And but she's actually, you know, I think she played the role fine. But, you know, that was the only time I ever thought they perhaps should have gone with someone else. But generally, you know, I've been more than happy with how everyone is. I mean, another great moment was seeing Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene appear for the first time and literally assume the poses of the front cover that I drew of them when they first appeared. And I thought, wow, that's quite a magical moment. And those three guys look exactly like how I imagined them to look. So sometimes visually and, you know, and I don't know, script-wise, they are a perfect match.
Have you ever had to draw the whole issue of a comic?
Oh, I've never had to redraw a whole issue. That would be ridiculous. The only time I've ever had to really... Oh, thank you. The only ever time I've had to actually redraw something is if I've pretty much just made a basic error, like... I don't know if you could call there's a... Oh, it's the one you haven't got. There is one missing trade cover here that Jaime unfortunately doesn't own, which is the one with Rick all blooded reaching out. I drew him with two hands, and I didn't even realize until I'd scanned it in, sent it off to Image, and Robert or one of the other guys there, Image, sent it back. And it took them a while to notice, actually. And they suddenly said, "You've drawn him with two hands." I was like, oh. And it was really obvious because they're both reaching out as well. So times like that, and there was another, that one there, I had to read, that's actually the cover you see there. You've got it, haven't you? There's Andrea I had to redraw Andrea because basically I didn't think that if she was like that, the logo would cover her face. So I had to redraw, just do a cut and paste thing and redraw Andrea so she would sit further down. So it tends to be technical things like that. If Robert doesn't like covers I do, we tend to have a bit of a face-off. Sometimes he wins, sometimes I win. I'm really into design and things like that. How book, you know, especially book covers and album covers, because I think in those two mediums, it's almost like anything goes. I think in the comics industry, as much as, you know, it's my bread and butter, and I love the comics industry, but I think quite often the comics industry is limited in their use of design. They can be very blinkered quite often in how they think things work. Whereas I think when you look at book cover design or album cover design, it strikes me there seems to be a lot more freedom in what you want to do. You know, you line up a bunch of books and they can be all so different. Line up a bunch of comics, they tend to all look the same, unfortunately. It's like magazine design. That's another thing I'm not a big fan of, because you line up a bunch of magazines, they all seem to blend into one, regardless of what genre, regardless of who's on the cover or whatever. So I've always been interested in that side of it, and yeah, I'm always open to people who are in bands coming to me and saying, "Oh, can you do us an album cover?" And I say, you know, so long as it's not zombies, yes. Zombies is a no-no. I won't do zombies. I do enough of those in the day job.
Have you or Robert discussed any plans or any discussions of finally including Daryl in the book, or is he a TV series exclusive, or are we getting a just wait and see?
Robert and I have discussed it numerous times, and the answer's always been no. or Robert's always said, "Don't worry, we're not going to put him in the book," and I've said, "Good, because I'll never draw him either." No, he is a TV exclusive. There are characters that will forever just be on the TV show. Probably doesn't apply the other way around in the comic book. You know, I think any character, there's a, you know, it's a free-for-all with characters obviously going into the TV show, but with characters created for the TV show, no.
What do you guys do when your comic book becomes the top-selling book of the month or of the year?
What do we do?
Celebrate?
Does
he give you
we both simultaneously roll around in a pile of money on our beds, maniacally laughing, generally in our underpants. There you go. Just to paint you a very sexy picture.
Last question.
Hi. What if you have an opportunity to draw one title for DC or Marvel? What title would you draw?
I wouldn't. As simple as that. I mean, well, I say that sounds a bit arrogant, but if now, because obviously, because we've had the success of The Walking Dead, it's put me in a great position that I can do pretty much anything I want to. So the last thing I'd want to do is somebody else's character anymore. If you're given the choice to do your own stuff or somebody else's stuff, what would you choose? You'd always choose to do your own stuff. So I'm incredibly fortunate to be in that position. So it's a kind of a moot point, really. I wouldn't really want to do any DC character or Marvel character because there'd always be something I'd want to create in front of that. But having said that, probably Batman.
With that concludes our Q&A. Let's all give a round of applause for Charlie Adlard.